Yeah, just gradually, and then I could just like see him as he went around one of the corners, and then it does sort of straighten out a bit so you can see, and I could just gradually see myself reeling him in.
Nice.
So, yeah, I mean, you have to take it with maybe a pinch of salt isn't the right phrase, but he's like raced the day before, and so I'm not looking at that time I've ridden into him and going, oh yeah, I'm that much better of a rider than him, because that's certainly not true. But you have to take advantage of it when you can.
That's this week's guest, George Goodwin, talking about chasing down and catching Ali Brownlee at the Helvellyn Triathlon. And this is the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, PrecisionHydration.com. Electrolytes in different strengths that match how you sweat. You can get 15% off your first order with the code Oxygenaddict15. All right, everybody, welcome to the show. I hope you're all good. Got a great interview for you today with George Goodwin. As you'll already have heard in that little trailer, George is the winner of the Outlaw X event recently. And he's also ran Ali Brownlee very close at Helvellyn. So long overdue a catch up with George. He's got lots of wins under his belt over the last couple of years in the UK over 70.3 distances, places like Weymouth and the other UK 70.3 races. So great to catch up with him. I had a little chat with him at Outlaw X, and he's a cracking lad as well as being an amazing talent. As you'll hear from the interview, he's surprisingly down to earth. He's very humble. He doesn't get carried away too easily, and even the thought of racing shoulder to shoulder with Ali Brownlee, he says later on in the interview, he's more bothered about not annoying Ali Brownlee than and thinking tactically about the racing than he was about kind of trying to overtake him on the bike leg. So he's got a very wise, mature racing head on his shoulders, I think, and he's definitely one to watch. So look forward to that. Hope you enjoy it later on. Okay, this week's news and results is brought to us by our sponsors, Precision Hydration. Now then, if you've not got yourself some electrolytes sorted out for the winter, PH are the guys and girls to talk to. You can take their online sweat test. They'll give you a really good lead as to whether you're a particularly heavy or particularly salty sweater. The reason that's important is if you don't know how salty you sweat or how heavy you sweat, it's going to be very difficult to keep your electrolytes balanced. And that in turn means it's very difficult to stay hydrated correctly. Now, I'm a really salty sweater. I've got over 1,600 milligrams of salt lost in, or sodium lost in every litre of sweat that goes out. So it's almost impossible to put like 2 or 3 grams of salt on top of a meal after a training session. But PH doesn't taste salty. You mix it in with your drinks. It goes down really well, and it helps me sort of avoid cramps when I'm riding on the turbo or running on the treadmill. Helps me avoid those horrible in the middle of the night cramps, and it helps me stay hydrated in general. So yeah, I'm absolutely loving this stuff. I'm a massive, massive fan of it. I don't advertise it because they pay me. I advertise it because I went to them and said, you're the solution for my problem. And so many of the athletes I coach just rave about this product as well. So in terms of the amount of money that we spend on Tri-Kit, a relatively tiny amount, getting the right amount of electrolytes in your drinks can have a massive and disproportionate effect on your training and racing performances. If you're not convinced, you can book a free hydration call with their experts. There's a link in the show notes. You can get a 20-minute call with them. And if you mention that you heard about it on the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast, you get entered into a free draw to win a £50 Precision Hydration bundle, which is awesome. All right, this week's results then. First up, the World Cup this weekend out in Sardinia at Oxygenaddict, I believe it's pronounced. Me and my usual pronunciation problems there. Men's race first up. Vincent Lewis absolutely hammered everybody. Such an impressive performance by him. He's in such great form at the moment. First up on the swim, he strung that field out like nothing I've ever seen. It was single line of swimmers. He put something like 15 seconds into Ali Brownlee in the water. Really, really turned it on. All bunched up on the bike. Ali Brownlee had a very strong bike leg and he bridged up. Christian Blumenfeld bridged up. And unfortunately, Ali had a pretty poor shoe change, which left him a little bit down. He ran through to come in third. Vincent Lewis and Christian Blumenfeld ran shoulder to shoulder. And Blumenfeld looked very strong the whole way through, but Van St. Louis just looks a different level at the moment. He was so relaxed with about 300 or 400 meters to go. He just dropped the hammer and sprinted like a track runner, put about 30 meters between him and Christian Blumenfeld in no space at all. It was such an impressive piece of running. He seems to be, at the moment, he is in such great form, but he is the complete deal at the moment. He's strong on the swim, he's strong on the bike, he's strong on the run, he can sprint on the run, he can handle his bike really well, he can climb really well. He's the complete package. So 3rd win for him in as many weeks, pretty much. Very, very impressive. Over on the ladies' side, Flora Duffy was just in imperious form. She just swam, biked and run away from everybody. Back in 2nd, we had a great result for Great Britain's Beth Potter. Now, a lot of you will remember we had her on the show last year. She's come from a 10,000 metre track running background, and obviously is extremely handy over 10,000 metres, but that's not the only part of the story. It's been able to ride well as well, and this is the first time I think we've really seen a show that she can ride really, really strongly and then unleash her run. So she ran away from everybody else on that run there in the 10K to come home in 2nd place. I think Steinhauser edged Leonie Perriot for 3rd place, but obviously really, really good performance from Beth Potter. And again, another great performance from the British ladies. So what a headache for the selectors going into the Olympic Games next year. I'm glad I don't have to be the one who's looking at doing that. Next up, we've got an announcement from the PTO that they've awarded the first 4 of the wildcard slots for Challenge Daytona. And off the back of this weekend's racing, it's no surprise on the men's side, there's a wildcard gone to Van St. Louis, obviously the man who's in form at the moment, and Christian Blumenfeld, another man who's in form at the moment. Blumenfeld's obviously got much more form over the middle distance. Van St. Louis has obviously got great form over Olympic distance, and this race in Daytona falls somewhere sort of in between. So expect the pair of them to be very, very strong showings. The women's side, they've given slots to Georgia Taylor-Brown and Nicola Spirig. So again, 2 absolutely high quality athletes there. Really looking forward to seeing Spirig go head to head with Georgia Taylor-Brown. And I was having a nosy earlier on. If you haven't seen this yet, get yourself over onto the PTO website. The list of athletes that has qualified for the Daytona race is absolutely unbelievable. Just a handful of names who've qualified here. On the men's side, we've got Frodeno, Brownlee, Keenley, Sanders, Skipper, Hoffman, Von Berg, Worth, Curry, Gomez, O'Donnell. Absolutely unbelievable. We've got some other Brits racing. I think I've seen David McNamee's on the list. George Goodwin's made the cut as well, which is fantastic for him. Over on the women's side, Daniela Reef, Lucy Charles Barkley, Crowley, Haug, Teresa Adam, Holly Lawrence, Carrie Lester, Heather Jackson, Laura Phillip, Skye Mensch, Chelsea Sodaro. Other British names, obviously we've already said Georgia Taylor-Brown. Emma Pallant's down there to race. Kimberly Morrison's down there to race. Laura Siddle's down there to race. It is going to be an absolutely stacked field. Now, one name that's missing from that at the moment, as far as I'm aware, is Gustav Iden, the reigning current 70.3 world champion. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether... I'm quite surprised they overlooked him in the first wildcard round, actually. I'd have thought he'd have been the first person at the after wildcard too, with this being closer to the half distance than anything. So watch this space. We'll see if my inkling that they're going to offer him a slot is correct or not. Check the space out, I guess. And finally, more news especially for the British audience or people who want to travel over to the UK to race next summer. The Outlaw series have announced that they're going to be opening this week. So list of races is as follows. Outlaw Half Nottingham, 16th of May. Outlaw Half Holcombe, 4th of July. Outlaw Nottingham Full Distance, 25th of July in Nottingham. Outlaw Half Bowood, the new race, on the 12th of September. And Outlaw X is going to be on the 26th of September. So pre-entries go available this week on Wednesday, the 14th of October. You're going to get a link if you want to enter both the Outlaw Full and any one or more of the half distance events. On Friday the 16th, entries open if you want to enter 2 or more half distance events together. On Monday the 19th, links are going to get emailed out for anyone who wants to enter a single event for the people who have pre-registered. And general entries are then going to go live next Wednesday, the 21st of October. I was having a chat with the race director, Ian Hamilton, this morning over Zoom, actually, and he was saying they're really excited. The amount of interest they've had in this has been pretty incredible. They've had over 12,000 people pre-register to get on the name to get slots before the general entry open. So he fully expects that at least half Nottingham and probably even the full distance Outlaw will be completely full before they even go on general entry. So really great to see people backing it up. It's a fantastically run race series, really friendly event. Really impressed with the organisation. I think it's probably the premier event series in the UK. I've got to be honest. I'm a really big fan of the organisation. So yeah, if you want to be on it, hopefully you've managed to get yourself on the pre-registration list. We're going to have a whole bunch of Team Oxygenaddict athletes racing there next year, just because we love the brand so much. Great stuff. So then, over now to Coach's Couch, and we're going to be talking to you, I think, over probably the next 4 to 6 weeks. I'm planning on doing a series with you on how to train during winter for triathlon in the summer. I'm going to talk about the approach I use coaching my athletes, and hopefully if you're not coached or you're self-coached, it's really going to help you out, because I talked to so many athletes after Outlaw X when I was down there who came up and were asking for advice about what they should do and how to get in shape for next summer. And it really strikes me that there's an awful lot of confusion around. There's a lot of conflicting advice around. And hopefully what the series is going to do, it's just going to simplify it for people a little bit. It's never going to be easy training for half distance and full distance races, but we can make it a lot more simple. And one of the most important key aspects of this, I think, is for you to approach it that you're training for triathlon, not as though you're training for separate swim, bike and run events. And that's one of the common themes that came up from people who were saying to me, like, I've been following a swim plan from this company, and I've been following a bike training session on the Sufferfest, and I've been doing some run workouts that I got from Runner's World magazine, and it didn't seem to come together on race day. And I think the reason for that is human nature tends to look at big training plans, or tends to look at anything, try and make sense of it, try to draw out the key points. And the danger with doing that with separate swim, bike and run plans is we tend to go toward what looks like the exciting and sexy sessions and take those out of the swim plan, those out of the bike plan, and those out of the run plan. Usually they are the harder sessions, because that's how our brains work. Usually they're the intense interval sessions, and we end up doing at threshold or above threshold interval sessions in swimming, in biking and in running pretty much every day of the week. We end up really tired, we get sick, and yet we don't understand why, because each of these training plans we're looking at seems to be advising us that that's what we should do. So I'm going to encourage you to take a step back and really think of it logically. If you looked at a swimmer's swim plan and they had 2 intense interval sessions a week, if you looked at a biker's training plan and they had 2 intense interval sessions a week, and if you look at a runner's training plan, they have 2 intense interval sessions a week, it's tempting and possible to look at that and go, well, I want to train for all 3, so I need to do 6 intense interval sessions every week. And of course, you've only got to take a small step back to realize your body just can't do that. Your body's only capable of doing a very limited number of high intensity sessions every week. And that number is probably, for most of us, 2. For our aging athletes, it might be even less than 2 every week. And for our very fittest athletes, it might be 3 intense sessions every week. If we look at our marathon runners training plan, if you look at Eliud Kipchoge's training plan, most of his running is done at like 7 to 8 minutes a mile, and his race pace is under 5 minutes a mile. Of his 110, 120 miles a week, at least 100 of it is done at really relatively slow pace for him. There's a lot of steady work underpins the ability to do those high intensity workouts. Same with a biker, same with a swimmer. And so there's no reason to think that us as working age groupers can do more higher intensity work than a professional athlete could do. So what we need to do is take a step back and work out the most intelligent way that we can combine intensity across all 3 sports, training as a triathlete, not training as a swimmer or biker or runner, and find out a way that they can all work together. Okay, that's what I do with the athletes that I work with, and that's why they have so much success. I think it's not because we've got magical special sauce that I sprinkle over everybody's dinner and they get to go really fast. It's because oftentimes I'm making people do less hard work. It means they're more recovered for the hard work that they do, and it means that they can absorb the hard work they do. It's kind of getting people out of their own way. A really common thing I've had with people, I've taken a lot of calls over the past couple of weeks, as I'm sure you can imagine, with the, I've said there's a link in the show notes, click it and have a coaching call with me and work out whether you're a good fit for our team. Almost to a man and woman, people I've talked to, the key defining characteristic that they've said is that they're trying to do too much all the time. This is I'm trying to do a bit more, and then I get sick, and I've got to have 3 days, 5 days, 7 days off. And I get back into it, and I have a great week and a great 10 days, then I get a niggle, and I've got to have a week off or 10 days off, or I can't run for a bit, so I try and do it on the bike instead. Because there isn't a joined up thinking, because the uncoached brain leads us to think, right, what I've got to do is really hard work all the time. A coach is going to say to you, like, no, don't do that. Most of my job is actually saying no to people. It's quite cool, that, being paid to say no to people. But because they actually do certainly less high intensity work, the stuff they do is absorbed better and they make faster progress overall. So that's kind of my overview for you to think about as you're going into winter. It's to look at your triathlon training as one joined up piece of thinking. Identify where you can do the hard work and identify where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And for most of you listening, for anybody who's really busy and a professional, for anybody who is entering middle age, certainly, or later middle age, if you're still trying to do hard run sessions, that's almost certainly the big danger point in your training plan. I'm certainly never going to say don't ever do them ever, but that's the thing you can eliminate that's the biggest risk to the consistency in your training. And consistency is the thing that's going to get you where you want to go. So, quick overview here. What we're going to do with our athletes is we're going to do those 2 intense interval sessions on the bike every week. The running is all going to be relatively easy pace. And because of that, people get really consistent blocks of running in over the winter. They don't pick up any niggles. The consistency leads to a really strong and durable body. So if we do start introducing faster runs in the springtime, the body's ready to absorb it. And honestly, even without them, loads of our athletes get massive PBs over 10K at the start of spring without any fast run training, just because they're so durable and because they've had such a big block of niggle and injury-free running. Meanwhile, the cardiovascular system's getting really well trained on the bike with the hard interval training that we're going to have you do. And that cardiovascular fitness transfers directly into a benefit for your running. And in simple terms, cardiovascular fitness just means the ability of your body to transfer oxygen from the atmosphere through your lungs into your blood and into your working muscles quickly and efficiently. And if you're training that ability on the bike, those same muscles that you use on the run are still going to have that same trained ability to transport oxygen into the working muscle quickly, even though you haven't necessarily been doing hard running and training. Okay, so that's my quick overview. It's think like a joined up thinking triathlete. That's the one thing to identify. Get out of your own way, cut some of the quality out of your workout, make a commitment to do 2 hard workouts a week on the bike, make everything else really easy and steady, and see the improvements that happen. Okay. One of the things I do with our team Oxygenaddict athletes is I give them a training plan, obviously, but then at the end of the week, we track how many people have done 100% of the training that we've done them. And get this, from 170 athletes, we've had 71 athletes this last week in our 100% club, having completed 100% of their key sessions over the last week. It's absolutely phenomenal. Very close to 50% of the athletes not missing a session. And that just goes to show the improvements that they're going to get come as part of this consistency. Okay, so if you want to find out a bit more about being coached by Team Oxygenaddict, like I said, there's a link in the show notes. Click that. You can book to have a chat with me or one of the team. We'll talk you through all of the benefits of being a member of our team, and hopefully we'll be able to help you out. We've got partnerships with the Performance Chef, so our athletes get meal plans. We've got a partnership with Matt Bottrell Bike Fitting, so we get webinars with him on bike position and bike power and bike skills. Got partnership with Precision Hydration, offering personalized hydration calls, and also with HRV for training. So all our training plans are informed by HRV guidance, which means you take your heart rate variability every morning, and your training plan changes depending on the advice you get given, according to basically how ready you are to train that day. I think it's the most comprehensive triathlon coaching program for busy age groupers. So if you want to find out more, give us a call, click the link in the show notes. And you can also come and ride with us on Zwift Tuesdays at 7:15 p.m. UK time on the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast Power Hour. Workouts guaranteed to raise your FTP, give you a faster, more powerful bike leg this coming season. All right, guys, let's head over to this week's interview of the week with George Goodwin. George, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations on your recent excellent results at Outlaw X and Helvellyn. How are you feeling? Have the legs returned back to normal?
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me. Getting there. Just had a easy week last week and back into the training now. So, I wonder if there's a bit of the Helvellyn fatigue still in them. Like it's so different, that race, that I think my legs have not quite fully got over that yet. But,
well, that's the thing I wanted to start off talking to you about, because I've done Helvellyn a couple of times and loads of my friends have. Yeah. And it is, of all the races I've ever done, Ironmans, Ultras, Triathlon X, it's the sorest I have ever been. I think running down that mountain at the end with no respite is just the most brutal thing I've ever experienced. Was it the same for you at the very pointy end of the field? Yeah,
it was hard. That last maybe 1,500 metres when Jack caught me, Jack Willis.
Right.
Like, it ended up being a proper race at the end, but not really, because it was so slow, because we were both knackered. It's probably the slowest sprint finish you'll see. But yeah, I was quite. So I recce'd it. I did the National 10 time trial on the week before, the Sunday.
And how did you get on with that? Let's ask you with that. How did you?
Okay. So I came 19th in that.
Okay, nice. Okay, and what time did you do?
I think it was 1920 or 22 or something like that.
Okay.
It was awesome. Really close between 10th to 20th was there's a second between every person. So it was
really?
Yeah. So it was close, and then the top 10 were a little bit. But yeah, that was I've been doing quite a lot, and I've taken it this year to as a chance to really improve on that shorter sort of 20-minute effort. It's probably not my forte in terms of, my forte is probably the 2-hour stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, I've just been using that, and I thought it was a good, that was my goal. As soon as it got announced quite early. And that was before we knew there was any triathlons on or anything. So I was well, that's my sort of goal for the year now, because I've got nothing else on. And then quite luckily, it was a week before Helvellyn, so I was I can still do it. So yeah, I was really happy with that. You learn a lot from the British time trial scene in terms of all the kit and aerodynamics and all that sort of stuff. So I think it will help in the future, definitely.
I've got to say, the way you were riding on the video I've seen from Outlaw X, your position's amazing. You look like a real tester. You're really aero. You've got a really flat back. You're in the classic sort of, I call it the Matt Botterill position, where your hands are quite high and your chin, yours in particular, your chin's almost lower than your wrist is, it seems like. So you've obviously got incredible flexibility, but did it give you confidence going into the triathlons that your cycling had kind of moved on to another level, do you think, having finished so high up? Because that's, top 20 in the National 10 is a quality performance, isn't it?
Yeah, I was really happy, and it's sort of one of those ones with time trials. It's not like a race in terms of, if you cross the line first in a mass start race, you could be happy. You're happy straight away when you cross the line. But in a time trial, you can be a bit could I have done that a little bit faster? Or, especially when it's 10 seconds between, 10 guys. But yeah, I think, I'll take it forward into racing. And I've always, we work quite a lot on position. It's so important now, it's just, and I think British guys will always be ahead of, a lot of the rest of the world in terms, because the time trial scene is so strong. that people, you know, it just translates so well into what we do.
It does seem like it's become, and I suppose an arms race is the wrong phrase, but it seems like you can't afford anymore to not be an uber time trialist in the British triathlon scene. If you look at the race at Outlaw X, in the top 5 we've got you, we've got Tom, we've got Tim Dunn, we've got Adam Bowden, all of you arguably, you know, top 20 in the country in time trialing as well as in triathlon. So people have really got to raise the game to be able to ride with you guys these days.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like how I think, you got the Germans and, Uber bikers who are maybe a lot more powerful than people like me, my sort of size. But so we have to make up for it in other areas, and like size and position on the bike. So, it's not about power, is it? It's about how fast you go.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's about
how
fast you go.
People get sort of caught up in numbers, like power numbers, whereas you should really be taking more pride in how low are how low can your power numbers be with how fast you can go.
That's the time trialist mindset right there, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we did the National 10 on the Sunday, and then on the day after we drove all the way up to Glenridding to did a course recce. So I rode the course, and then sort of ran and walked the run route. And all that week, I was like, I don't know if I can race. Like, my legs they were so bad. Like, my quads were actually swollen.
Really? After the National 10?
Not necessarily the 10. I don't think it was. I think that might have contributed to the fact that my legs were a bit fatigued already. But it was more the run, when I recce'd it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't go mental at all because I knew that I've only got 6 days. But I didn't really run that week until I think I managed 15 minutes on Friday, and then 25 minutes on Saturday, and then that was it. Had to get so I was a bit worried about not actually being able to race, but they came good just in time. So.
Well, talk us through the race at Helvellyn itself then, because obviously the race has been around forever, hasn't it? It used to be I think it was the National Police Championships back in the day, before it was even before Rob from Try Hard put it on as a sort of commercial event in inverted commas.
Yeah.
So it was like a classic British course. And then it's had some amazing, it seems to attract almost like a hardcore of this crossover of these fell runner type triathletes who can just ride the road bikes like the wind and run like you've never seen, and then you never see them the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And I used to turn up, fancy my chances, and get spanked and finish 50th, and I think, where have these guys come from? So yeah. I think, it was really interesting for me to see, okay, the PTO have stepped up and said there's some prize money behind this. Let's see where the top triathletes stack up against, and there were a couple of pretty good eyebrow raising local results, and then amongst you guys as well. So
yes, yeah.
So that was interesting. You guys had a rolling start. Was it 5 seconds rolling start for the swim?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I'm getting confused with Outlaw X because they did a different gap. But yeah, I think it was 5 seconds at Helvellyn.
And then how far back down the swim were you then when you got started?
I think I was 6th or 7th in. So I had Elliot Smales and Jack Willis were a couple ahead of me, and then I had a couple of guys around me who were, it was quite good because it was pretty much done on swimmability. So I ended up swimming with 2 guys, Lewis and James, all the way around. It does, it helps you massively if you can get onto feet and stuff. Yeah, it was cold, and it was quite a long swim actually. It was definitely not 1,500 meters.
No.
I think it was almost full.
I've got a sense that in any of those races, the hardcore ones like that, or Slate Man, and they go, yeah, we're going to shorten it. It's cold, we'll shorten it, and then they go, yeah, whatever. It's 1,500 meters in inverted commas.
So yeah, that was good. Not much to I think the way the races are at the moment with the staggered start, the swim's usually the most boring part anyway, but it's even more boring now because there's no fighting or anything at the start, you know, because it's just get in and you're on your own. So yeah, tick that off nicely. Pretty happy with it considering how I know like my swimming needs a while to get into shape. I'm not the most natural swimmer in the world. I need to work hard at it. And like 5-6 weeks probably isn't enough for me to get back to. So yeah, considering I was happy with that. And then yeah, just obviously I knew the bike legs were good after the week before the national 10. So yeah, just sort of set about trying to set myself up well for a good result. Because again, you know, I'm very confident in my running, but maybe not so confident in my fell running.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to, you know, set myself up well with people like Jack. Jack's got a GP vest for mountain running, so you know I knew he was going to take like a lot of time out of me. Maybe not on the uphill, but certainly on the descent.
Yeah. And then how far was the time gaps out to? I think Ali was out in the lead, wasn't he? He set off first on the swim. How far was the time gap to Ali Brownlee when you came out of the water?
So I think he had like a 25 or 30 second head start already on me. And then I think he took like a minute 20 out of me in the swim.
Okay.
So it was almost 2 minutes, I think. Yeah, it must have been because I rode 2:15 faster than him. So yeah, it must have been about 2 minutes.
You got to be happy with that, right? You got to be happy with riding 2 minutes 15 into Ali Brownlee.
Yeah, it was good. I didn't. It's like quite confusing with how the races are. That like with the staggered start and everything, you don't quite know, and especially with the women, the way they did it as a handicap race. I had no idea really where I was particularly. But when I went past Elliot, he sort of said, "Oh, you know, Ali's just up the road, you know." And yeah, like I didn't set myself to like go and catch him, but I was more thinking about what do I need gap wise to try and get a good result, basically.
I see.
And that just means riding as fast as I could, and then yeah, I ended up catching him just at the top of the struggle, basically.
So one of the things I watched some of the footage there, and it looked like you made a lot of ground up on him going up the struggle. There was a long lens shot, and yeah, I don't think you were even in sight at that point. Or you were certainly a long way back, and then that was probably halfway, just before the really steep bit in the struggle, and then you caught him. Yeah. As you crested over the top of Kirkstone Pass. So you must have really closed that gap fairly rapidly, do you think? Or
yeah, I think so. I think I'd sort of slowly dragged it within sort of catching range before we got there. And then, yeah, like I think maybe just sort of, I didn't know until I went past some spectators. Like you got the initial steep bit as you go out of Ambleside. And yeah, like I couldn't see him at all. And then I just went past some people who just said, oh, you know, he's only, I think it was like 45 seconds.
Okay.
So yeah, just gradually, and then I could just like see him as he went around one of the corners. And then it does sort of straighten out a bit so you can see. And I could just gradually see myself reeling him in.
Nice.
So, yeah. I mean, you know, you have to take it with maybe a pinch of salt isn't the right phrase, but he's like raced the day before, and you know, so you know, I'm not looking at that time I've ridden into him and going, oh yeah, you know, I'm that much better of a rider than him, because that's certainly not true. But you know, you have to take advantage of it when you can.
Yeah, because of course he'd raced in, was it Hamburg the day before, and flown back over, and sort of 2 races in 2 days. Even so, though, he, you know, Ali Brownlee's showing up on the start line. He's not there to promote.
No, absolutely.
Shoes he's got on, you know, he's there. He's there to win. So
yeah, and if you look at the footage, he's definitely trying.
Yeah, no question. So, what were your thoughts on coming over the top of Kirkstone Pass and having sort of made the catch?
Yeah,
and you know, you're kind of 30 seconds up the road virtually, I guess. What were your thoughts at that point?
I was in two minds whether to like try and push on like go past him and push on, or save myself for the run. And I think I made the right decision in sort of saving myself a bit, because if I'd gone on the front and smashed it the last sort of 8-10k back, the legs would have been in a much worse state going onto the run, and realistically you're only going to make, you know, a handful of seconds on Alistair riding on the front. So yeah, I sort of like finally closed the gap properly on the descent. It was quite nice having him to follow, to be honest. You know, didn't have to pick my own lines, and then, you know, just sort of rolled back quite nicely into Glenridding.
Nice. Okay. And then talk us through the run then. This is where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? This is the fun part for everybody listening. So first, for people who haven't done it or seen the footage, describe what that run's like.
So like, if you can just imagine like a massive hill, basically. And then the first part is sort of, you know, it's just a really steep hill, and the path's like sort of little, it's like rocks basically, but little rock steps almost.
Did you find that it feels steeper than it looks? Like you think to yourself, I should be able to run up this faster than I am doing? Not really, but like running with Alistair at that bit, and he's just sort of jogging up. It looks like, if you're running behind him, it looks like he's sort of just jogging up. So I'm thinking, why am I finding it so hard? But yeah, no, it is steep. I thought when I recce'd it, you know, I sort of took it steady when I recce'd it, but I thought, in the race you'll be able to run this. And then you get about 5 minutes into it and you just can't. Well, I certainly couldn't. So you sort of like alternate between power walking and running, and then it flattens out a bit, and you can run the section before you get to Swirl Edge. And then Swirl Edge is just like rock climbing. You know, it's not rock climbing; it's just scrambling. You know, it's not far off, is it? I think for people who haven't seen it and you hear us saying, "Oh, it's a bit like rock climbing," they kind of go, "Yeah, whatever." But there are definitely places where it's 3 points of contact, and you're looking at I remember looking at the people and going, "Oh, we've gone the wrong way."
Yeah. I'm quite lucky that you know, I went to university in Stirling, and we did quite a lot of, you know, a reasonable amount of like mountain running when I was up there.
Yeah.
Just in off season and stuff, and so I managed to, you know, I had a bit of experience of that sort of terrain. You know, I wouldn't say I'm, you know, good at it, but it certainly didn't daunt me like it was the first time I'd done it. So that was, you know, positive. And
like if you talk to Skipper was just like, "Oh my God, what just happened there?" Afterwards, what was that?
Yeah, he didn't really realise how hard it was going to be, I don't think. But yeah, so at that point, Alistair had he wasn't miles ahead, but because the mist had started to come down, I couldn't really see him.
Right.
But just at the top is where I caught Nikki, who was leading the women's field. But obviously, we were actually racing each other because of the handicap style system they'd done. So at that point, I knew I was in second overall. And then I was just thinking, you know, I'll just get down safe, and you should have second secured. But then, you know, little did I know, well, I thought, you know, I still knew Jack, he was going to be flying, but I didn't realise he was going to be that close or take that much time out of me. So, that made it tough.
And so where on the roads were you when he finally caught you? Were you still running on the steep downhill roads, or had you actually got onto the flat?
It wasn't on the flat, but it was, it goes onto that sort of like wider track. Yeah. And it's sort of concrete. It's like paved, but it's not a road.
Yeah, down past the outdoor centre, that section there is hideous for running on it.
Yeah. And then, so like just after he caught me, we then went we got into the village, and it's like really steep on the tarmac. Yeah. And I just managed to stay. I knew like this bit is my weakest bit, like running downhill. I can't let myself go like he can down there. So if I can get down this bit and still be in front of him, I know I've got a chance. And then I also knew that he started 10 seconds ahead of me. So if he started sprinting, I didn't need to beat him over the line. I just had to be within 10 seconds of him.
Got you.
But, you know, I've raced track quite a lot when we were a bit younger. And then I was on camp with him in New York in like February, March. And like he's on the track and stuff, he's just so quick, like take absolute chunks out of me like on a track session. And so I was just thinking, oh, this is going to be hard. But I was hoping that like the strength from the long distance stuff I've been doing would, you know, or the distance would sort of deaden his legs a bit. And I think it did. So yeah. So
you just managed to sneak the second overall then.
Yeah, I think it was 2 seconds in the end.
Nice.
But
nice.
I would have been happy with third. I know that sounds quite bad, but the swim and bike had gone really well, and anything after that was a bonus because I knew that sort of run wasn't my strength. So I knew that a strong swim and a strong bike would, you know, meant I was in good shape. Basically.
Yeah. So. You didn't seem very daunted when we spoke about racing Ali Brownlee. Had you raced him before when you were younger? Was that the first time you'd raced him?
I don't think I have raced him when I was younger. I've been on a couple of teams where he's been in the senior and I've been as a junior.
Okay.
And then I raced him at Nice last year.
At the World 70.3 Challenge.
Yeah. So, you know, like I've raced a lot of big names already. I guess it's slightly different with Alistair and Johnny as well because they're, you know, that's people my age have like looked up to them as, you know, the biggest names in triathlon since I've been doing like since I started the sport. They were basically at the top of the game. So it's slightly different compared to racing, you know, other people because they're just names, whereas Alistair and Johnny are almost like they're not, but they're almost like on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Totally. I try not to think like that because if you start thinking like that, then you're never going to beat them.
That was going to be my question to you. Really, is that, you know, it's Alistair Brownlee. The names don't come much bigger in triathlon than a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. You know, second at the World Champs at 70.3. He had an amazing race out in Kona. I mean, he's one of the all-time greats, if not possibly, arguably, one of the greatest triathletes. So as you're pulling him in, riding up the struggle, did you have any kind of mental battle going backwards and forwards between, I must not be intimidated, he's just a person, and, oh my God, it's Alistair Brownlee and I'm catching him?
I think, like, you have to... I sort of just, like, I know what sort of like racer he is, so that comes into account as well. Like you don't want to sort of make him even more aggressive than he will be by, you know, being disrespectful or, you know, me just going past him and like saying something to him might, you know, he might take that like, you know, he might be like Michael Jordan and be like, oh, you know, I took that personally, and then absolutely. You know, absolutely smash him. So you know, you have to take that into account as well. That's not just because of who, like the name. That's, you know, just being smart and sort of realizing the personality of the people you're racing. But I also knew like that. It does sound quite defeatist, but like I knew that the likelihood of me beating him on that run was tiny. Like he's grown up, you know, in Yorkshire, doing a lot of, you know, he's raced fells, you know, since he was, you know, 10, 11. And I've grown up in the Midlands, you know. I've done a few years in Scotland, but like I've never been good at it. So like I had to sort of just make the calculation as to what was the best, you know, best option. I think in a more traditional, if it was a more traditional run, you know, I would have backed myself a lot more.
Right, that's interesting.
In that, you know, if I was in that position coming onto a run with him,
okay,
I'd back myself a lot more.
Well, that leads me on to sort of talking about watching you race Outlaw X. Do you think did you take a lot of confidence from your performance at Helvellyn and perhaps subconsciously from the fact you've ridden 2 minutes into Ali Brownlee, regardless of whether he's raced the day before or not? There's got to be some level of subconscious that goes, actually, do you know what? My cycling has definitely moved up a level or two over the winter.
Yeah, like it was definitely a big confidence boost. I tend not to, I don't know, I don't think I'm like the most confident person in the world. Like, so even after a performance like that, I still think of like the most negative outcome. Because I think if you prepare for that, like the worst case scenario, like if you have a bad day, then you're prepared for like everything in the race. So I think, if I have a bad day on the bike, then this is probably gonna, like, I basically like try and play out all the different scenarios I think will happen. So I've got like a plan A, B, C, D, whatever, and then you can sort of execute each plan depending on what happens in the race. And luckily, it was plan A.
Well, talk us through Outlaw X then, because you've had a very solid performance there. You're out onto the bike with basically you and Tim Don. And Tom Davis was around for a while, wasn't he? Yeah, so it was quite, obviously the swim got shortened to, I don't know what it was officially, but roughly 750 metres. And the way the stagger worked as well, it worked quite well for me. I had some good swimmers behind me. I had Elliot, Jack, and Morgan Davis. They were the three swimmers off behind me. I think Tom was the one off in front of me. Okay. So I knew, like, over 750, if I can just hold them off as long as possible behind me, if they catch me, at halfway, I know I'm good at, my water skills are good. I can probably, hang on to them for the rest of the swim then. And that's what happened. Like, I think all three of them actually caught me at the same time. I think Morgan had stormed through from the back and dragged them too. And then I just, when there's three people coming past you, they're not going past you at the speed of light, but they're moving a bit faster than you. It's quite easy it's a lot easier to get on someone's feet halfway through a swim than it is at the start. And then, so like I had a good swim. And then, like I was sort of in transition. I had a good run. It's quite a long run from the swim to T1. But then I knew like I was going to be okay in that cold. I already had everything I was going to wear on the bike on. So I think I had one of the fastest transitions. So I actually came out, even with the stagger, I actually came out of transition, with Tom. So we basically, I was at the front of the race then, and I know I tick that, that's my worst part. And I'm already at the front of the race. Nice, yeah. So I know, like, that's that bit gone. I can focus on what I'm good at now. I love that even the race winner has got the same attitude to the swim as 99% of the age group. Thank God the swim's over. Yeah, it's not like thank God, but and when I'm swimming really well, I sort of I really enjoy having a full and I would have enjoyed having a full race at Outlaw, but it's almost like purely in terms of like the performance side of it, it's like that's ticked off, Yeah. Nice. And then out onto the bike, then it pretty quickly became just you and Tim Don. Again, another Uber biker, rides with Matt Botterill, another guy who's got a fantastic position and goes fast regardless of power. I know him and Matt spend a lot of time talking about how fast they're going at the moment, which, as you've said, it's a mindset shift away from putting out raw power numbers, isn't it, and looking for how fast we can go for how little power. Yeah, absolutely. And I know Tim was sort of aware of. It's obviously Matt has been doing. I think he did the national 10, and I beat him. So Tim was like, he's obviously aware, and Matt keeps an eye on things in the time trial scene and the triathlon scene, obviously. So Tim was aware that I was riding well.
And he sort of, that first 10K out onto the bike, he really put the hammer down. So yeah, I had to sort of go with, you have to go with him. It's not, I always refer to non-drafting triathlon as it's sort of like a semi-drafting. You're sort of like a semi-pack race, really.
Okay.
Like, it's not, in a time trial, there's no tactics. There's pacing, but there's no tactics. Whereas in 70.3 and full distance Ironman, there are definitely tactics. Like, you can make a break, or you can sit back and not do anything and wait for the run. So you have to take that into account as well. And I think, Tim's, he's been at the top of the sport since I was like 2 or 3. So he's, wily, and he knows all the, ins and outs of, the tactical side of it. And, I would think I'm quite, switched on to things as well. So I sort of knew that, I had to, that there was like a minute where I had to make a decision, like, do I go with him, or do I just, hang back, and then potentially he's gone. So yeah,
that was the decision, was it? You think drilling first 10K allowed you to stay with him, and after that it backed off, and you did 10 minutes each or whatever.
Yeah, so I felt good, so I thought, we'll go with him, see how it goes. And he did quite a long stint on the front without even really looking around. And eventually saw I was with him, so I did, short sort of bit on the front, and then he came back round again, and I was quite happy there, until about maybe 30K into, I'd done a bit, and Tim had done a good chunk. Then in my head I was thinking, oh, that's it, it's gone now. Like, the guys behind, like, it will just get bigger and bigger and bigger. But I got a split, and it was only like 45 seconds. So I was thinking, actually, like, probably need to switch back on now. And just be mindful of, we might have gone off too quick, and then people come back. So then I did quite a long turn on the front, a long couple of turns on the front, and Tim came through, just so I could, like, take some fuel on board and stuff. But yeah, and then the gap just, like, grew and grew and grew gradually, all the way then.
Nice.
So yeah, no, it was good. Always good to be. I don't think I've ever actually raced him.
No, I think he was saying it's the first time he's raced on British soil.
Yeah, in like 16 years.
Yeah, something crazy like that.
Yeah, crazy.
And again,
he was in America for a long time, wasn't he?
That's right. He was out in Boulder, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And again, another absolute legend of the sport. He was at the Olympics in 2004, I think, was his first Olympics.
2000.
Maybe? 2000 was it even?
Yeah.
Wow. So you literally were 3 years old at the time or something.
I was 3, yeah. And he was world junior champ 2 years before. So yeah, I was born in 96. So like in 98, he was already arguably like at the top level of the sport, and he's still there. Like, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that then, from your own personal point of view, knowing, this isn't a sport like football where at 29 your career's over. You could conceivably be doing this at the top level for the next 20 years. How are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's quite, I forget it sometimes, and like really get like hung up on the next race, like doing really well. Yeah. And then I take a step back and think, oh, it's only it's one race, I'm still, this is my 3rd year as a professional, like, long distance. When I look back in when I'm Tim's age, this one race will probably, just be a tiny blip. Yeah. Whether good or bad. So in the end, it's not quite as important as it feels at the time. So sometimes it's quite nice to just take a step back and think like that.
And especially, being only 3 years into your pro career, with this year being one of the 3 years when there's essentially been no racing right the way through until September.
Yeah.
Let's look back a little bit. 2018, just for the listeners to go through some of your better results, because I've got them up here on the screen. 2019, you won 70.3 Staffordshire. You also won 70.3 Weymouth.
Yeah.
You were 6th in the European Championships in Elsinore, and you were 12th at the World Champs in Nice. Yeah. So as a sort of second-year pro, that's a pretty decent set of results over 70.3, isn't it? Winning the 2 national 70.3s, 6th in Europe and 12th in the world. What were your reflections looking back at the end of that year, at the end of 2019?
There was like positive and negative thoughts behind it. Obviously from 2018, when I think I'd come second at Staffs, I'd had a podium at a challenge race in Spain. So, that was a good first year as a pro, and end of 2019 I was like, oh, great progression. There's some good, I've improved. That's good. But then I look back at the 2 big races in terms of field, Europeans and Worlds. Europeans was probably my worst physical performance in terms of, it was the one race of the year where I didn't feel good.
Okay.
So the swim was okay, bike was way down on I got out of the swim and thought, right, I can, if I ride like I did at Staffs a few weeks ago, I can bridge up then to the front of the race, and it just wouldn't happen. And
right.
I was just in the middle of the second pack and really struggling even just to stay in the middle of the pack. And then I had a really good run, to be fair. I think I ran 69 high on the run.
It was the second fastest run of the day, I think, behind Javier Gomez.
Yeah. So it wasn't all bad, but in terms of overall performance, it was
69-minute off the bike is pretty decent running, George.
It was, I look back at that and think, oh, okay, if I'd had as good a bike as I did the rest of the year, what might have been. And then at Worlds, everything went right. I'd planned, plan A, the scenario that I thought was going to happen in terms of other people, what they were going to do in the race, played out exactly how I thought it could, to my advantage. Came off the run in a great place. I think I was just outside the top 10.
Were you basically in that second bike pack coming onto the run?
There wasn't really a pack, I don't think.
Was it not? Was it all spread out? Because all I can remember, so, yeah. I think the only coverage we got shown was the 3. It would have been Gustav and Alistair and Rudy all together.
Yeah, and then
I think that's all we saw.
It was splintered, yeah.
There's the dog. Famous dog. Postman's here.
And then, so I came off the bike just behind Sebi and with Gomez. And
okay,
I was like, I'm in good run shape. Started picking people off, made my way up to Sebi. And I was in 5th place.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow, my first ever world champs, I'm in 5th.
Yeah.
This couldn't be going more perfect. And then just that at 12K, I got this massive stitch and I just couldn't run properly basically.
Really?
So I look back at that and think, it might have happened anyway. If I'd gone out steady, I might have still got a stitch and would have been even worse off. But it's just almost that opportunity, I feel just slipped away. But so yeah, that's the negative side of it. But I also think I was really proud of both of those situations at Europeans and Worlds, how I dealt with them in terms of at Europeans I managed to get a good result on a day where I wasn't feeling great, and then at Worlds I pretty much executed everything I wanted to as well as I could, and it was just on the day something happened I couldn't control.
I've got the results up here on my other screen, and I've been having a nosy at them then and looking at, it really was a case of those world champs. I thought was one of, if not the strongest 70.3 world champs field. Aside from Ferdinand not being there, everybody else who's a name in 70.3 racing was there, and a lot of people raced well. If you look at the run times, there's a lot of guys under 110 in that pack, and Sebi ran 109, Christian Blumenfeld ran 109. If you've gone through 12k on his shoulder, running 109 pace, that's...
I think I had the fastest split up to like halfway on the run.
Did you really?
Yeah. So looking back, I was like, maybe I did get a bit excited. But I thought I was in that shape, I think.
Sometimes you've got to roll the dice, haven't you?
Absolutely. And I'm
the
glad
World
I
Champs
did.
is the place for it, yeah.
Because now I think, maybe next time I'll give it a bit more respect and not... Because when I got up to Sebi about 5k into the run, I just went straight past him.
Right.
Like, just on the front, like, got a gap. And I was thinking, Quid's in here, like, I'm away. And bearing in mind, I'd come off the bike with Gomez, and I didn't even see him on the run until I got a stitch. I was thinking, I just ran that first 10k faster than one of the best runners in the sport.
Yeah.
And maybe I just got a bit excited, But
again,
now
you don't seem... I mean, this is great because I think you've got a really good sort of... We used to have this phrase in school sport: he's a big game player. He loves to play against a local high school. It seems like you've got that mindset, only you've got it on a world stage. You've got Gomez, you've got Sebi Kienle, and you're not intimidated in the slightest by them. They're just people to race against, which is fantastic from your point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always been like that. Like, people I've trained with would never say I was the best. I was never the best, like, trainer in terms of my ability. Very consistent, but I'd never pull out big race sessions. I've got a lot better at it in the last few years, but like when I was at university and stuff, like, I was very average in training, but I'd get to a race and I'd be able to, I just think I just like racing under pressure, and I think I'd rather be like that than, not be able to perform to the best of my ability.
Do you think maybe that's the key? The fact that, you're saying in training I'm just consistent and I don't pull out big performances. It sounds like maybe you save the big performances for when they need to come out. When you're racing Sebi in the World Champs.
Definitely. But I think my progression in performances the last couple of years has been down to better. I've been training better in terms of like numbers I've been hitting in sessions. I've been better, so then I race better.
Okay.
So I still have that ability to be able to race up on my ability, but you can't get away from the fact that you have to be able to put in the numbers in training.
And so then the rest of this year, obviously there's not a huge amount around in terms of races that's available to you. The big thing that's on the horizon that we talked a little bit about in Thorsby was the opportunity to go to the race in Daytona with the PTO Championships race there. What's the situation for you? Are you qualified? Are you going? How's that going to stack up? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I am the last qualifier. I am ranked 40th as of when they froze the rankings in, was it February or March? I think they froze the rankings. I keep on saying I was fortunate enough, but then people keep correcting me saying, no, you weren't fortunate, you had a good year. Do you know what? It's the results that you've had stack you up in my mind in a 70.3 field as much higher than 40th, 6th in Europe, 11th at the Worlds on a bad day, 2 wins. To only be on 40th in the ranking seems a little bit unfair to me. I think they weight full Ironmans more, so you get more points for a full, which considering how hard a full is, I've not done one, but everyone says they're hard, so I guess I have to believe them.
They are.
It's a bit odd to me that they then
to race over a half distance race, obviously some of those rankings are going to get turned over on race day, aren't they?
So I could feasibly go in as the last ranked athlete and come out as well.
Yeah.
I could, you know.
Yeah, you easily could. Yeah,
So,
not easily,
you know,
but
you know,
definitely could.
I could be the biggest jump from people
Yeah.
who going, oh, he's ranked 40th. How has he come, you know, wherever I end up? But I think because they're not quite representative of 70.3 rankings, like people like Rudy von Berg, he's done like exceptionally well to get in the top 10 purely on 70.3 races.
Yeah.
Like I think he's ranked 6th, like purely on his 70.3 performances, which is, you know, very impressive.
Fancy another crack at him?
Yeah. That, you know, he's a very good all-round athlete. Got no weaknesses really. You know, obviously no one's unbeatable. But you know, he's very solid across all three. I think you have to be now. Like you can't really afford to cede much in the swim anymore.
Yeah.
No, it's you know, the PTO are really helping out with help to get to America, because obviously all the travel sort of bans are still in place. So yeah, they're really helping out to get the exemptions from the embassy, which must be hard because, you know, there's athletes from I think over 50% of the athletes are from Europe. Then there's like 20% from the rest of the world to like Australia, New Zealand. And then there's the rest are from America. So yeah, the sort of organisation to have to try and meet the criteria for all these different countries must be a big task for them. But they're really sort of going to town to help us out. So yeah, we'll see if we can all get there.
And who do you see yourself having a ding dong with come race day in Daytona? If your scenario one, we'll call it, your best day scenario plays out, who do you find yourself in a battle with?
I find see at Nice it was almost easier to predict because of, like, people might think, because the course is so hard it's more difficult to predict, but I think it's more difficult to predict a course where it's pan flat. So it's 20 laps around the NASCAR circuit. That's the course.
And what are your thoughts on that in itself? That's kind of a unique situation, isn't it?
Yeah, like pretty cool. I think it's going to be quite weird. It could be quite boring. No, I don't think it'll be boring. It's more difficult to predict because you don't know how people will react to 80k, because it's a funny distance as well. There's 80k on the bike, to that sort of constant pressure on the pedals for the full, because, you know, at Nice you've got the climb, which takes an hour, say, but then you've got 40 minutes of not really pedaling. Whereas you've got in Daytona, it's going to be like an hour 40 of like constant pressure on the pedals.
Sounds like it'll suit somebody with a decent time trialing background this year, George.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we're just like looking at all the details, because on a course like that, it's, you know, it's all about how fast you go, aero, and then how much you can save for the run, which will, again, is just pan flat round the circuit. So yeah, I don't know. I find it more difficult to predict than it would be at Nice. We'll probably look into it a bit more as it gets closer. There's going to be some wild cards there. You know, I don't think I can say who they are yet. So, but I think it's going to be interesting.
Interesting.
A mix of different distances.
Interesting stuff. Good. That's a very professional answer. We're not being drawn any names. We'll leave it there.
I mean, we haven't been told yet, but I've...
You've heard some rumours?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, listen then, and just before we wrap this up, give us a rundown of the sponsors and the people who've helped you out, because obviously it's never easy breaking into professional sport, and I was having a bit of a lustful look at your Ribble TT bike in transition as we were going by. So that looks like a bit of a speed weapon. Yeah, Ribble have been really good. Obviously, they sort of, you know, they came to my attention
in terms of what they've been doing with their bikes through the time trial scene again. We've had people like Bigham and Archibald riding them like ridiculously fast, like 17-minute, 10-mile time trials. So, you know,
love one of those.
And, you know, I know Dan is very, very, you know, mega geeky aerohead. Like he wouldn't have something if it wasn't fast. So yeah, I've been very fortunate to have be on their bikes for this year, and they've been, you know, going fast, so that's good. And then yeah, I've been Hoka have really helped me out this year as well. Haven't, you know, had a chance to race in their shoes very much. You know, I never thought I'd be racing in an off-road pair of shoes again. So, but yeah, I've had a chance to try out like a big range of shoes. So they've been great.
Are you in the Carbon X's?
I'm in the. So I train a lot in the Carbon X's. I'm on their new race shoe, which is going to be released, I think, next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something in the pipeline.
Yeah, it had its debut at the US Marathon Trials earlier in the year. The lady, the Hoka athlete who won that, she wore them to their first, you know, like US Marathon Trials victory there. So yeah, they're a great shoe, really good. A bit lighter than the Carbon X.
Okay.
A more sort of like carbon plated, bit more on the sort of Nike Alpha Fly sort of.
A bit more racy end.
Yeah, maybe a bit less durable, but
yeah,
you know, really quick. And then yeah, I wore the Speed Goats in Helvellyn, which are a great shoe. Yeah, like Hoka are like massive into the ultra stuff, ultra running, and I think at like the UTMB Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, I think the Speed Goats, like I think over 50% of people wear the Speed Goat now.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really popular.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, that was good. And then yeah, I've had some, you know, really good help from people basically helping me go faster, like Velotech. They're an Irish company, make fast skin suits and tri suits, and yeah, they've helped me out with a bit of aero testing, wind tunnel testing.
Nice.
Yeah, we've got a few local companies like Cycle Power Meters. So Bob, who owns the company there, they helped me out with power meters, and Bob's like, he's the numbers man. You know,
he's just a legend, isn't he?
Yeah.
He was Botty's coach back in the day, wasn't he?
Still is.
Still is. Okay.
I believe he still is. So yeah, like
I got my first power meter from him back in the day, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think he might have had the first SRM in the country. Like,
I think so.
So yeah, like he's just a wealth of knowledge that you know, I'm coached by Blair Cartmel, but Bob really helps with all the sort of he helps me look at courses and like, you know, how to ride them.
Nice.
So yeah, like he really helps get into all that sort of detail, which is becoming more and more important, you know.
Yeah, it definitely is, isn't it?
Yeah,
cool. All right, so take us 5 years into the future. Jump into your DeLorean.
Yeah.
If everything goes to plan, where do you see yourself at 29 years old? This is my final question.
At 29, I think I would have just stopped doing purely 70.3s.
Okay.
By that point. I might still just be focusing on 70.3s. I don't see myself, I don't really want to step out into full yet. I want to be as good as I can be at 70.3s before I make a step up, because a few people can do it, but I think it's really hard to be at your peak for half distance and full distance racing.
Yeah.
Like a few people like Frodeno and Alistair and can probably do it, but you know, he saw the toll it took on Frodeno that 2018. Like he was in, you know, he was unbeaten, and then suddenly just broke.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I really want to, you know, I think by the time I'm 28, I would have liked to have, you know, been on the podium a few times at 70.3 Worlds.
Could be 5-time champion. We could be talking of you.
Could be 5-time champion.
You could be the Mark and Dave of the 70.3 world, pal.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be good. But yeah, and then, you know, see what we can do at full distance racing. 70.3s are starting, you sort of getting used to a distance when they start to feel normal. Like the time, like when I was a junior and started doing Olympic distance racing, I was like, Jesus, this is taking forever. And then after, a season, you're like, oh, actually, I feel I can race at this distance now, not just like hang on and get round.
Yeah.
And then like the last couple of years, you start in 70.3, I felt like, yeah, this is, I can actually race this now.
Race to win. Yeah.
So, hopefully by the time I'm 28, 29, that'll be right up there, and then
have it cracked.
Have to start the process again at full distance.
Brilliant.
Not just feel like I'm getting round.
All right, mate. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show. It's been great to interview you. Congratulations on those results this year, and I really hope you have a great race out in Daytona. You seem like
thanks very much. Fingers crossed everyone can get there and it can go ahead.
You said it, mate.
I think it'd be a great end to the year for everyone.
Let's hope so. We'll be watching this space.
Absolutely.
All right, George, thanks very much.
Cheers, Rob. Thank you.
All right, what a cracking chap George is. I've got to say, I'm really impressed by, firstly, the way he's raced this year. He's an absolute animal in the racing, but he's got a really mature head on his shoulders. He's not freaked out or intimidated by racing the big names. He's obviously got a very astute tactical brain on his shoulders. And I think he's going to surprise a few people out at Daytona. I really hope that they can manage to make the travel visas and all that work. And obviously it's 6-8 weeks away yet, but fingers crossed. I think it would be so good for the triathlon community if we can get that event to happen. And like I mentioned earlier on, the list of names that are down to race, if they can get even, half of them or 2/3 of those names to race, it will be I think one of the biggest races, if not the races of the past 5 years or so. So really, really looking forward to hoping that happens. All right, guys, that's pretty much bringing us to the end of this week's show. Here are some discount codes and deals for you to finish with. Precision Hydration, use the code Oxygenaddict15 for 15% off your first electrolyte order. And TeamOxygenaddict.com, the most comprehensive triathlon coaching program for busy age groups. You can click a link in the show notes and have a chat with me or the team about whether you're a good fit for coaching with us. So remember, there's links in the show notes for all these sponsors so you don't have to remember them. Until next week, have a great, safe training and racing week. I'm Coach Rob Wilby, and you've been listening to the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast. See ya.